everyone, this is Myth, your life and performance coach, and welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. Actually You Can is more than just a fun phrase to say. It's a philosophy of limitless potential, a mindset, an attitude, a conviction. Most importantly, it's about to make you achieve what you might never have thought possible. On this show, we discuss strategies for growth for ambitious individuals looking to achieve big things and live a thriving, fulfilled life. You'll hear from inspiring guests who will share their journeys, challenges, and lessons learned. And I'll be sharing insights and actionable takeaways from my aligned results framework that will help you to align your goals, mindset, and strategies to reach your highest potential. Be sure to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to so you can easily find this podcast again and stay updated with new episodes dropping every week. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dave Albin. Dave shares his inspiring journey from a troubled childhood to leading firewalks for Tony Robbins events for nearly 20 years and becoming the #1 firewalk instructor in America. He discusses the impact of his upbringing, his battle with addiction, and the pivotal moment that led him to seek help and turn his life around. Dave explains the power of firewalking as a transformative experience and how it can help individuals overcome fear, break through limitations, and achieve personal growth. If you're ready to be inspired to crush your limiting beliefs, then this episode is for you. Let's get to it. Hi, Dave. Welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have you on here today.
Hi, Myth. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And so, Dave, you are the #1 firewalk instructor in America. And so I'm assuming you didn't attend a career fair and they were like, come be a firewalker. I'm interested to hear, how did you end up here? Take us right back to the beginning.
Well, I love that. Yeah. What? You can't go to school to become a firewalk instructor? Well, my past really, the very beginning, Myth, really was, it starts back, a couple of months before I was born, literally. My biological father, we don't really know what happened to him. All we know is that he hit his head, he hurt it really bad, and to save his life, they had to put a plate in it. Now, this is in 1954. And unfortunately, there was a tremendous amount of pain associated with that plate, or so my mother told me. And sure enough, 2 months before I'm born, he turned to her and said, I'm going to the grocery store. And we never saw or heard from him again. So I know nothing about my father, my biological father. I've never seen a picture of him. I know nothing other than what my mother was able to tell me. And so when I was born to a single mom. Now, she already had 2 boys from a different man. And then she was living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my grandmother, her mother, and another cousin. So there were 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California. And Mom was working up the street at the Roosevelt Hotel. She was a server. And, my mother came out of that, what I call the greatest generation of all time, all her brothers and sisters. They grew up during the Great Depression. They grew up during World War II. And when all the men were off fighting the war, in Europe, fighting the Nazis and defending in the Pacific against the Japanese attack, guess what the women were doing? Everything, right? And a lot of people don't realize that the women were back in the U.S. building tanks and jeeps and munitions. And my mother was known as Rosie the Riveter. She literally worked for McDonnell Douglas. She was building airplanes. She was building wings. She was putting rivets into wings. So that's kind of how that generation grew up. They didn't throw anything away. If something broke, they fixed it. They were super, super resourceful. They never wasted time doing anything. You couldn't. Back in those days, guess what? When you got up every morning, you went to work. You were up at the crack of dawn. You were tending to the garden. You sewed your own clothes. That was the lifestyle for my parents. And so, she was very, very resourceful. She worked really, really hard as a server. She picked up every shift she could get, but Myth, it wasn't enough. And so one day she realized she couldn't feed me. And when I was 5 years old, she went to her oldest sister, Pat, and she said, Pat, I can't feed David. Would you and Bob adopt him? And they said, sure. And they did. So they moved me from Hollywood to Long Beach, California. And I had the perfect lifestyle. Bob was a highly decorated officer in World War II. He was career military, Army, National Guard. And so we had nice things. We had a nice house. We went nice places. We went to nice restaurants. We had nice vacations. It was actually, the perfect lifestyle for me. And then when I was 11 years old, the first day of summer, 1964, a day I'll never forget. My mom came into the TV room. Again, this is the first day of summer, so obviously you're a kid. You're pretty excited about, what's going to happen throughout the summer, right? She came and got me. She said, David, come in the kitchen. We need to speak with you. And so they set me down, and my mom looked at me and put her arm on my arm, and with tears in her eyes, she said, David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents. Okay. Well, what do you mean you're not my parents, right? That's like, to me, it was like walking somebody outside and saying, yeah, I know the sky looks blue, but it's not really blue. Well, of course it's blue, and of course you're my parents. So I had a difficulty processing that at 11 years old. And in fact, she even went on to say, she said, your Aunt Dean? And I go, yeah. And she goes, she's actually your mother. And I was like, I don't even like her. It was like bizarre, right? And the reason I didn't like her, it's not that I didn't like her. It's just that every time she was around me, she wanted to be around me. She wanted to sit next to me. She wanted to hold me. She wanted to touch me. She wanted to kiss me on the head. Well, yeah, duh, I'm her son. But I didn't know that. So it created this, this uncertainty about what was going on with all that. And it was never inappropriate. It was just weird, right? And so shortly after they told me this, about 2 weeks, they both started drinking. And that's when my life took a really hard turn. Pat, when she drank, she was kind of a happy drunk, if you will. She would pass out at the kitchen table kind of a thing. Whereas Bob, he was mean. He was nasty. He got really ugly. And so here I'm watching these two people that I know and love turn into these people that I wasn't recognizable anymore. So they went to the grocery store one day. You did that back in the 60s. You could leave your kids home. It was no big deal. Just call a neighbor across the street and say, hey, we're leaving David. If he needs anything, can he come knock on the door, right? And so when they left, I knew where the booze was. And they were hiding it in plain sight. And I wanted to know what the heck this stuff was. So they left. I went and grabbed it, got a coffee cup, filled it up about halfway. Miff and I drank it. And I'm 11 years old. And it was like pouring rocket fuel into my body. I never had a chance. At 11 years old, I truly believe that day, that moment, with that drink, I was an alcoholic. Because I started thinking and acting out like an alcoholic at that age. Well, obviously things changed radically right there for the rest of my life and the rest of their lives. By the time I was a junior in high school, I was already doing hard drugs. And in fact, I went to school one day. They called me in the principal's office and they said, Albin, out. You're expelled. Get out of our high school. And I did. And I was okay with that. I didn't care. I was kind of like, I didn't think that anything I was learning was going to influence how I made a living because I was already making money at a young age. I already had an entrepreneurial spirit, literally. The first job I had at a young age was a paper route. And back in those days, what you did is you went to a location, you got your papers, you picked them up, you folded them, you put a rubber band around them, you put them in your saddlebags, you put them on your bike, and you went and delivered them. And of course, you had to collect all the money. You had to knock on doors when new people would move in and ask them if they wanted the newspaper. So it was a full-time job, at 11, 12 years old. I also worked across the street from a golf course. And what I learned about golfers really early on is that they kind of suck at the game. They're not very good at it. And so they would hit the balls over the fence. And so I'd get on my bike and I'd ride around the perimeter. I'd find them. I'd bring them back home. I'd clean them. And then I went back to the golf course in the trash cans, and I got the boxes that the new balls would come in, and I'd put all these balls into these boxes, and I'd go back into the parking lot and sell them back to the golfers, right? So this is all happening. I'm young, right? So my mom, by the way, another job that I had was she grew beautiful flowers in the backyard. Pat had a green thumb, incredible. And she would cut them and she would arrange them for me. And when she would cut them, she did something very interesting. She taught me when I was a kid, she cut the flower at an angle, not at the bottom. And when you cut it at an angle, it opens up more surface area so more water can get into the flower. It helps it last longer. The other thing she did, she arranged them. She had a beautiful eye for color. And she would put the flowers in a bucket and she put water in it for me. And then she would put 7-Up, about a half a bottle of 7-Up in that water. And those flowers, I guess because of the way she cut them and because of the sugar in the 7-Up, they would outlast the florist 3-1. They'll last for like 2 weeks. And so there I am, learning how to deal with people and selling flowers on the street corner. So what I learned at a really young age was there's money out there. Go get it. Go find it. And so again, when I got kicked out of high school, I didn't care. It was time to go find money. And I did. I got a really great job. And I needed a good job because I had a drug habit and an alcohol issue to pay for. And to kind of move this forward, it just, you know what I mean? Once you're on that road and you really can't get off, or at least you don't think you can. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and things get worse and worse and worse, and you become more addicted. And, my life just started falling apart at every level. Well, I'm in my third marriage, and now it's 1988. On June 8th of 1988, June 8th, I woke up that morning and I said, that's it. Again, I'm in my third marriage. I have 3 stepkids. I'm living in the basement. They're living upstairs. And they wanted nothing to do with me. I was pretty volatile. I was pretty dangerous. And when I woke up that morning, I said, that's it. We're done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I can't take the pain. The physical and emotional pain is beyond belief. Because again, I'm addicted to alcohol, heroin, and cocaine. And so the only thought I had in that moment, and I want to clarify, in that moment, was to take my own life. And so I proceeded to do that. I got out my pistol, I loaded it, and as I'm getting ready to do that and having that conversation with yourself, I'm like, you know what? When you pull that trigger, maybe your troubles are over, but those 3 kids and that woman upstairs that you love, you're going to ruin their life. Literally. You can't do that. It's wrong. You got to figure out another way, pal. That's not going to work. And so as I'm struggling with that, the next thing I know, I have a thought, well, call Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know what's really interesting about that moment is I didn't know who AA was. I had no idea. I'd never been to an AA meeting. I didn't know anybody in AA, yet I've got this thought to call them. It was like, where did that thought come from? And so I did. I called AA, and I got this wonderful human being on the phone. And over the years, I've nicknamed her Madge, because Madge saved my life. And the reason I call her Madge is because she talked like this. She probably smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day, right? But tell you what, she was a badass. She was a gatekeeper, right? It was her job to interview you. And if she thought you were serious enough, she would call somebody to come pick you up and take you to an AA meeting. And that's what she did. And so this man by the name of Lauren came and picked me up, and he took me to my first meeting. And I took to AA like a duck to water. I loved it, everything about it. For the first time in my life, I actually felt like I was in the right place at the right time with the right people. And so I did what these men taught me to do. It was an all-men's group. And I did everything they told me to do and then some. And when I got there, they gave me a chip, something like this. And it said 24 hours of sobriety and had the serenity prayer on the back. And then it had the AA emblem on it. And so they gave me that. It's called the surrender chip. And then they gave me a chip for 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year. And last year in 2003, I picked up a chip for 35 years. And so what happened was, when I was getting sober, I had insomnia. And so I was up late at night all the time. My sleep patterns were all over the place. And so there I am one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there he is, the man himself, the guy that owned the airways back in the 1980s, right? A young, vibrant Tony Robbins, man, there he is. And he's selling a program called Personal Power. It's a 30-day program. Well, when I first listened to Tony, I didn't like him. I thought he was pompous. He's all motivated. And, I'm like, I'm not motivated. All right. I'm hurting bad. So that encouragement kind of was like, we were offset, if you will. But he said 2 things that got me. The one thing he said, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, whoa, okay, he must be talking to me, because that's why I drink and use drugs. Because I was either trying to run from pain or I was trying to, chase some pleasure. So that resonated with me. But the other thing he said that really got me was how do humans make decisions? And how we do that is one of two ways. We make them out of inspiration or desperation. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, I'm pretty desperate. Maybe I should listen to this guy. And so I ended up buying this program. And they sent it to me, Myth, and it came in a big old box. And again, it was a 30-day program, so it was big. And it came on these little white things called cassette tapes. Right? Some of your listeners are not even going to know what the heck cassette tapes are. If you go to the Smithsonian Institution, they're there. They're with 8-track tapes and reel-to-reel. So anyway, I plugged them in, Myth. I listened to them. I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. And so one of my buddies in AA was noticing the changes in me when I was going through the program. So he asked me one day, he goes, dude, what's going on with you? There's something happening besides AA. And I go, yeah, I've been listening and reading from this guy named Tony Robbins. He goes, I know who Tony Robbins is. He goes, I bought his book, but I never read it. I said, well, how often does that show up in your life? And so I told him about the program, and I said, listen, man, I'll loan you my tape program if you'll promise me you'll listen to it. He goes, I promise. And so I gave it to him, and he did, and he went through it just like I did. Well, 7 years later, in 1995, same guy, Dan, calls me on the phone, and he goes, hey, man, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? And I'm like, no, man, I had no clue. And he goes, dude, come on, we got to go. I want to see this guy. And I don't want you to go with me. And I'm like, all right, man, I'll go. Yeah, I'm available that date. Sure, let's go. And he goes, great, I'll call you back. He calls me back an hour later, and he goes, done. We pick up the tickets at Will Call It. Here's what they told us to do. Number one, drink a lot of water. You've got to stay hydrated throughout this 4-day event. Number two, bring snacks. And the reason you need snacks is you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. And I laugh. You know, anybody that's ever been to a Tony Robbins seminar, they get it. They know you will spend a lot of time in the room. And then he said, you know, we need to bring a good attitude and we need to be ready to play full out. And I said, well, Dan, how much was the ticket? He said $695. This was in 1995, right? So I'm like, you know, what's that worth today? Like, I don't know, 1.2, 1.3 million? I don't know. You know, buy Bitcoin. That's all I know. And so just as he's getting ready to get off the phone, he goes, oh, wait, stop. Don't go anywhere. I need to tell you something. I want you to know, we're going to be doing a firewalk. And my brain immediately went, oh, hell no. I'm not saying anything, but my brain's going, no, absolutely not. We're not doing any firewalk. Well, you know what's interesting about that part, Myth? I didn't know what a firewalk was. What does that even mean? I don't know, but fire and walk in the same sentence didn't sound like anything I was going to be doing. And fear had been making almost all of my decisions my entire life. And the decision was no. But I don't want to say that to Dan, right? I just kind of go along with it. I'm being subservient. I'm like, yeah, sure, Dan, firewalk. Yeah, sounds interesting. All right, man, see you then. Well, the big day comes. And we get to the event. Tony takes the stage at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Next thing we know, it's after midnight. 10 hours in a room with Tony Robbins. You've got to be kidding me. And all he's basically doing is preparing you for the firewalk. Well, all of a sudden, you know, again, it's after midnight. Tony goes, take your shoes off. Well, I'm not doing the firewalk, so I'm like, oh, no. I'm not taking my shoes off. You're not tricking me, man. I know where you're going with that. Well, I got a problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? They're taking their shoes off, right? And so now I've got a dilemma. What am I going to do? Not take my shoes off and go out there and everybody catch me? That I'm not, you know, I'm a coward and I'm not going to do the firewalk? So I'm like, just calm down, relax, take your shoes off. And when you get out there, go with your plan. Go hide in the back. Ditch your buddy, right? It'll be easy to lose him, and go stand in the back somewhere and you'll be fine. You'll be good to go. Well, it gets worse. Because when Tony gets everybody going out there, he gets everybody to start chanting and clapping. So now you've got 3,500 people walking out there going, yes, yes, yes. I'm walking out there going, no, ain't going to happen. Well, it gets worse. Because when you get out there, Tony's got African drummers, right? So it's dun, 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 dun. Yes, yes. And when you get out there, right, there's a giant fire over in the corner. How do you firewalk 3,500 people? Well, you start out by building a big fire early in the day. And you set up a big pit like 35 feet wide and 70 feet long, and you burn it all day, and you just put cord after cord after cord of wood on it. Well, after 10 hours, it renders, and you've got a big giant pile of blue coals, and it's gorgeous. So what they do is they take a wheelbarrow over to that pit, and they load the wheelbarrow with coals. And then they bring a wheelbarrow and they lay 2 lanes of sod, or turf, you may call it in Australia. And it's about 3 feet wide, 15 feet long. Then they just take a shovel and they sprinkle those coals from that wheelbarrow onto that grass, that sod, and that's what you walk on. Well, again, I'm having none of it. I'm hiding in the back. I ditched my buddy. I got it all figured out. Well, here's what Tony Robbins knows. The reason he brought firewalking into his seminars is because he knew that firewalking is one of the most life-changing experiences on earth. And he knew it. It's been around for 1,000 years. Cultures all around the world have done it. The Phoenicians, the people of India, the Hawaiians, the Polynesians, the people of Portugal, the Spaniards, the Indo-Europeans, the Native American Indians, all around the world have been doing firewalking for 1,000 years. So he knew, he did his research. And the other thing he knew is there's people like me who are going to hide in the back. So he doesn't want you to miss out. He doesn't want you to miss that paradigm shift. He knows if he can get you across the fire, it's going to be one of the most life-changing experiences of your life. And so what's he do? He trains people to come find you. Right? I'm back there thinking I got it all figured out. No, I don't. Because here comes this guy out of nowhere. And he gets about 20 feet from me, and he stops and he looks at me, right? And he's looking at me funny, like a dog that hears a funny noise, right? And he goes, "Hey man, are you okay?" And when we're not okay, what do we say? We lie. "Oh, I'm fine. I'm good," right? "Nothing to see here, pal. Move along." And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey man, are you going to walk tonight?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. No." And he goes, "Hey man, that's cool. No problem." He said, "We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I thought, oh, cool. This guy's going to get me out of here. No, he's not. He's tricking me. Because the next question he asked me, by the way, this is a perfect stranger. I don't know who this guy is to this day. I wish I did, because he helped me change thousands, tens of thousands of people's lives. Because the question he asked me was, "Wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I thought, yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, let's watch. Doesn't bother me. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. This should be interesting. And he said, "Hey, man, you can't see anything from way back here. You're going to have to get in line." Now, okay, I took the bait, but in his defense, he's telling the truth. I can't see anything. Man, if I got 3,500 people standing in front of me, I can't see anything. I can hear it, right? They're already firewalking and they're screaming. Because when they get to the celebration end, they're jumping up and down and they're celebrating like crazy. They're still chanting. The drums are going. I mean, it's intense. That's all I can tell you. And there's no way I can really explain it unless you go there and you see it and feel it with your own eyes and ears. And so I get in line, right? And I'm kind of walking along. Well, another stranger comes up to me as I'm, in that line. And he whispers in my ear. And he said, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, he just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? When he says go, do you go? What does that mean? And so now I'm walking along, and all of a sudden I get to a point. I can't see in front of me. I got 1,000 people in front of me still. But I can see at an angle because they have all these fire lanes. And Myth, they're doing it. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Look at this. People of all ages, creed, color, all of them. They are firewalking. And I'm mesmerized. I can't take my eyes off it. It's like a car wreck, right? You say you're not going to watch it, but you do. You look at it, and I'm mesmerized. And I'm staring at it. And as I'm walking along, next thing I know, boom, guess where I am? Right where he wanted me to be. I'm at the front of the line. And so I look down, and that fire lane is 3 feet wide, 15 feet long, and the coals are on top, and they're bright red. And there's a wheelbarrow there. I could feel all that heat coming off, and my heart's going ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. I am scared to death. Well, there's a trainer standing there. And all of a sudden the trainer goes, eyes up. And all of a sudden, oh, he like yelled at me, scared me, right? Now my eyes are up. Well, when I was in the room with Tony for 10 hours, guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. Look to the celebration end, right? We know this. Everything we've ever wanted is sitting right over there on the other side of our comfort zone. And that's kind of the metaphor of how this whole thing worked there, right? So now my eyes are up, and he goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell. He could tell I wasn't in a peak state. He could tell that I was leaving a lot on the table. So he screamed at me. He's like, stronger! And I threw my hands in the air and I screamed as loud as I could, yes! And he goes, go, go, go. Boo! I took off. Remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. And here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take that first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you, right? You're not going to stop. Well, they catch you. There's two guys at the end, and they lock arms, and they catch you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet, and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet, and I'm celebrating like crazy. And I can tell you in that moment, Myth, it was one of the most exhilarating moments of my life. I felt like I could do anything. I had just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees. And honestly, I don't even know how I did it, but I did it, and I was successful. And so you're down there with 3,000 people, and they're screaming and they're yelling, and we're all celebrating collectively together because we just experienced something, all of us at the same time, right? So our self-worth, our self-confidence, our self-belief skyrocketed. Well, here's where it gets interesting. The next day, remember, this is a 4-day event. That was day one, that night. Now we're in day 2. 3,500 people standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue for day 2. And to this day, I've never seen or witnessed anything like it. It was phenomenal because I'm watching people get along humanistically the way we're supposed to. People are hugging. They're laughing. Some of them are crying. They're telling their stories. They're talking about the firewalk. They're talking about their fears. It was so beautiful to be part of and standing in that room and that energy that next morning. And I'm kind of like going, so, hey, did we drink the Kool-Aid last night? Yeah, we sure did. and now we're celebrating together collectively because we had gone through such an amazing experience the night before. Well, later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers, a guy by the name of Ted Macy. Super sweet guy. Him and his wife, Mary, were both trainers for Tony. And so I'm talking to Ted, and I said, so Ted, what's it like being in this environment on a regular basis, right? I'm guessing you are. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm here, a dozen times a year. And I go, that must be awesome. He goes, well, you know what? You could probably do it too. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you see all those people standing over there with the black shirts and the pink writing? I'm like, yeah. He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're people just like you. And all they did is when they went home, they called Robbins, filled out an application, and they got approved to come be here. You can do the same thing. Do it. Maybe you'll get selected. I did. I went home, called them. They sent me the application. I filled it out, sent it back. 9 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies. Whoa. Next thing I know, there I am. I'm in the environment. And, when you fill out the application, they go pretty deep into who you are and what you do and all this. It's like a 7-page application. And first of all, I have a security and a military background. So they immediately look, hey, we could put that guy on the security team and help take care of Tony's celebrities. The other thing is I lived on a farm. So did I know how to split wood? Yeah. Did I have wood stoves in my farm, in my barn? Yeah. Did I know how to use a hatchet and a log splitter? Yeah. Well, they put me on the fire building team because I knew all that. And that's where I hit home. I knew I was in the right place in my life for the first time in a long time. And so shortly after I got on the team, when you're a volunteer, you have to pay your own way. Well, and I did that like 6 or 7 times. Well, then one day they offered me a subcontracting position. They put me on the security team. They wanted me to become the assistant captain. This was all happening, by the way, in 95 and 96. 2003 rolls around. And Robbins offered me the fire captain position. That meant that I would take over all of Tony's firewalks globally. And so when I was talking to him, I said, now I have an issue here, a challenge. I homeschool my kids, and I really don't want to be away from them for long periods of time like that. They stepped right up. Tony said, what if we pay to have your kids travel on the road with us? Would that make a difference? Yeah, that would make a difference. In fact, what I love, and we were talking about it before we started recording, my first event with my kids was in Sydney, Australia. And so there I am, man. My kids, my family were on the road. My kids fell in love with Australia. They got to travel all over the world with their dad and their mom while dad was out there, facilitating all of Tony's firewalks. In 2005, we went to London. That's where we set the world record. We firewalked 12,300 people. Now, I want your audience to know that Guinness Book of World Record was not there. However, it's a world record. I know that there's never been a firewalk anywhere in the world, anywhere close to 12,300 people. In fact, the only thing that probably comes anywhere close is another Tony Robbins seminar, right, where it was 10,000 or 9,000. So that happened in 2005, and then in 2014, my life took another huge, huge turn. I'm driving down the road, and my phone rings, and it's Google. And Google wants to know if I'm the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins. Yes, what can I do for you? They said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. Okay. Well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And so we ended up booking a gig for Google shortly thereafter. In fact, I ended up doing 2 gigs for Google. We actually ended up doing the glass walk. We didn't do the firewalk because they wanted to do it in the middle of the day. They had 148 executives that were in Mountain View, and they wanted to create a paradigm shift experience to unite them. Google knows what's going on. They get it. They understand paradigm shift. And so that's what they were looking for. And so I told them, well, I can't do a firewalk in the middle of the day. It's got to be done at night, period. No exceptions. I don't bend that rule. It's a safety issue. I said, but we could do a glass walk. And he said, glass walk? You mean walk across broken glass? I'm like, yeah. And they go, ooh, tell us about that. Go watch Die Hard. You'll see a scene where Bruce Willis has to run across the broken glass. So that's what we ended up doing. And that's where I met one of the Google executives. They literally sat me down and said, look, Dave, you're at the top of your game, man. You may want to think about starting your own company. Because the bottom line is corporate America will eat you alive, man. They'll be all over you to create these paradigm shifts because that's what's needed. Because what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And they know that. They get that. Maybe SEALs know that. Big companies know that. So they were absolutely right. So shortly after Google, next thing I knew, I was at NASA. And then I went to Notre Dame, and then Virginia Tech, and then Microsoft, and Heineken, and Remax, and Y.M.C.A. And then, the next thing I know, I'm here with Myth on her podcast, right? So you just don't know where it's all going to go. So, yeah, since 2014, when we started Firewalk Productions, we've been going hot and heavy ever since.
What an incredible journey. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah. There's a couple of things that stand out for me, especially I know you say that your life can literally change in 4 seconds. And it sounded like with that firewalk, your life literally changed in an instant. And so I'm curious to understand, why do you think that is? As humans, sometimes we can resist change. People have been the same for years because they don't think that they can change. But you've demonstrated a number of times through your stories, you can literally change in an instant. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it goes back to, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. It's not going to happen. So it comes down to that moment. Obviously, the firewalk's been around 1,000 years. And, there's that definitive moment. You go to the event knowing that there's going to be a firewalk. So there's a possibility if you show up, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, there you are. You're caught in that moment. And you're standing there and you're looking down. And they're bright red. And you're scared to death. Well, how often does that show up in your life in other areas, right? I don't want to get married. You know what I mean? You go through the same kind of process. I don't want to start my own business. What if I fail? What if I don't? What if I get married? If I have kids, am I going to be a good dad, a good mom? You know what I mean? So we're playing this scenario in our head. If what? If. Well, what if I do this tonight? What's the worst that can happen if I firewalk tonight? Burn my feet off and die? No, it's not going to happen. However, I can tell you this, 4 seconds later, you make that decision, and that's the beauty. The firewalk pays off right now. You don't wait for it. Because if I can walk on coals that are 1,000 degrees and not hurt myself and not burn myself, what else can I do? What else have I lied to myself about, right? Because that really comes down to the motivational side and what pushes people over that edge. Why don't people get what they want in life? I ask this all the time in my seminars. Well, there's lots of reasons why I don't get what I want. I'm too young. I'm too old. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the education. I don't have the background. I don't have the resources. We come up with an excuse, right? So if you want to do something in life, you either find a way or you'll find an excuse. Henry Ford, that designed the Ford Motor Company, he said something pretty profound. And he said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And here's what I know. I believe the two most important times in a person's life is the moment they're born and the moment they figure out why. Well, when I walked across the coals that night, my why got big. It opened me up to what's possible in life. When I do my seminars, Myth, I put a picture of a guy on the screen behind me, and it's a guy by the name of Eric Y.M.C.A. And he's standing in a location. And so I'll talk for 20 minutes, and I'll go to the audience, and I'll say, so who here can tell me where my buddy Eric is standing? It's pretty obvious, right? So somebody in the crowd will go, Mount Everest. And I'll say, that's absolutely correct. And that guy right there, Eric, has climbed the 7 highest mountains on 7 continents on the planet. And he got to the summit of all 7. Put him on a mountain bike, he's pretty darn good. Put him in a kayak, he's pretty good at that too. But guess what? Eric's blind. And I'm telling you that right now in this moment to screw with your head. Here's a blind guy that climbed the 7 highest mountains on this planet. What excuses do you think he tells himself when he gets up in the morning? He doesn't. So you better be really careful what you tell yourself, because you're in control. You're the architect of your own life. Again, you think you can, you think you can't, you're going to be right. So if a blind guy can climb the 7 highest mountains on earth, what have you told yourself that's not true that you need to deal with right now and get your life headed in the direction that you know you want to go in? One of my mentors told me something one time, and I never forgot it. He said, Dave, every human on earth has 2 lives. And the second one starts when you realize you have only one. So it's real simple. Again, be careful. Create your own story. You want to change your life? Change your story. And so that's really what it comes down to. And the Firewalk gives someone the opportunity to do that. Now, if you take a group of people that work together and put them through that experience, they're all going to grow collectively, because it's going to affect all of them, right? So not only are you affecting your life, like if you go do a firewalk by yourself, like I have people that call me and they come up to my home up here in the mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, and they'll spend the weekend with me, and I take them through these transformational experiences. And they're basically by themselves, or they're with, their spouse or whatever. Where if you've got a group of people that in a company, and let's say you've got some problems, in this case you've got some dissension, let's say they're arguing over the political status. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. You should wear a mask. No, you should not wear a mask. Well, I'm getting a vaccine. Well, I'm getting 3 of them. So what happened on March of 2020? The total polar opposite of what I went through that second day, standing in the foyer, going into that venue. I watched how people are supposed to get along and how we're supposed to love each other and support each other and lift each other up. On March of 2020, it did just the opposite. It shredded everybody, and it demonized people. They did a really good job of demonizing, because they made you hate somebody. How's that going to work? And I get asked all the time, so Dave, you're a really interesting guy. Are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, give me a better choice. Are you kidding? I'm not interested in either one of them, because all you guys have done is just blame each other, and you don't ever stop doing it. So how is that going to work? Well, if that creeps into a company and that dissension starts by demonizing or looking at people as if we're different or we're not supposed to get along or whatever, then that's going to affect their bottom line. Because if you're working together as a team and that falls, then production drops. It's not rocket science. It's just the way the world works. And so that's why they hire me. They bring me in and say, Dave, fix it. Can you fix it for me? Yeah, we can fix it for you, sure. And so the other thing I do, Myth, is I bring the board break into the Firewalk now. My Firewalk seminars are different than Tony's. They're quite a bit different. They're much more rite of passage, right? The Native American Indians Firewalk, because, it's not because they need a motivational seminar. They work together and move as a unit. A lot of times when warriors would go into a battle, the night before, the women would build the fire for them, and then they would firewalk. And then if you didn't firewalk, then you weren't allowed to go into battle, and you would dishonor your family. So that's more, to me, of how to do it. So I just brought the board break in because it's a martial arts move, right? If you join a dojo and you go anywhere in the world, and before you go to the next belt, you typically have to break a board with your bare hands, or maybe your foot or your knee or your elbow or whatever. And so what I did is I took the board break and I have them, I give them kind of an assignment, if you will, to create the rite of passage. I have them write anything that they want to move towards on the front. On the back of the board, I'll have them write anything that they need to move away from, stop doing. I have them write anybody's name on the board they're in conflict with. So if there's somebody on this planet and forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying around resentments. It'll tear you up. And then to create the rite of passage, I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. So now that creates that ancestral side. So we get them out there, they break the board, we circle them, they come back, they do the firewalk, and then they get to go throw their board into the fire. So it creates a really powerful experience when you include the board break with the firewalk experience. Then there's some other things that I do as well at the firewalk. I do what's called a heart hug. And so I put them all in a circle after the firewalk, and I'll say, all right, look across and find somebody, make eye contact with somebody you don't know. And then once they do that and everybody's paired up, I say, now go over and walk to that person and stand 2 feet in front of them. And then you know how we normally hug? We go this way. Well, I do it the opposite. So I have them hug this way, and I have them hold that hug. And with their eyes closed, I have them take 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths. Well, the magic that happens is typically when you're in that second or third breath, what happens to those 2 people? Their heart starts beating at the same time. It's absolutely beautiful, right? So then I'll do that like 4, 5, 6 times. Next thing you know, you've got that whole group of people, no matter how big the group is, and their hearts are beating at the same time. It's an absolute beautiful experience. So, so that's just kind of how, when they hire me, I come in and do that, right? The other thing too is I have an academy once a year in October. People can send their people, or business owners or entrepreneurs or coaches or trainers, whatever, can come to the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy, and they spend 5.5 days with me, and I train them how to do all this stuff: how to firewalk, glass walk, board break, brick break, arrow break, rebar bending. I put them on the river, they float. I mean, it's an extraordinary, beautiful time up here in the Appalachian Mountains. And then when they go home, they can actually facilitate, and then I'm their backup to help them with anything that they need from the standpoint when they go back home to be able to put on a firewalk or a glass walk.
That's incredible. And I can see that you've clearly worked with thousands of people through glass walks, firewalks, board breaking. I'm sure there are people who have done it successfully and their lives have been transformed. Has there been anyone who hasn't potentially nailed it? Has someone burned their feet? Has someone not broken the board? And if so, what's the key to success with this?
Well, typically, if somebody can't break the board, then it's in their head, because I'll tell them, look, see that 7-year-old kid over there? They can break this board. So it has nothing to do with whether you don't have enough power. You're in your head. And so my question would be to you is, what's been holding you back your entire life here? Because I'm watching you. I didn't teach you to pull your hand back when you try to hit it. I taught you to drive all the way through it. And when you drive all the way through it, you're going to break the board. By the way, I buy my boards from a martial arts studio. So they come in an 18 millimeter, a 12 millimeter, and an 8 millimeter thickness. That means I can get four-year-old kids to break that board, right? It's pretty thin. And then the other ones, for adults are much thicker. So my job is to create a top 10 experience in their life. Get them through the board and then get them across the fire. And I'm pretty darn successful. I have a very, very, very high percentage of people that come to my seminars that complete both. Are there going to be ones once in a while that don't? Yeah. And that, unfortunately or fortunately, that's the experience they're supposed to have. Because when they go home, their brain is going, yeah, everyone else did it but you. Question is why? What's going on? Again, there's something deep inside of them, some limiting belief that is blocking them from just driving through, that board and that firewalk. Now, I've also heard the opposite. I've done companies and I've, had conversations with the CEO or the event planner for the company, and, months later, production went through the roof. And that's typically what's going to happen. You do a firewalk, your life's going to change. It's that simple. That's why it's been used by cultures all around the world. And there's, again, it's something magical. It's an element. It's fire. And we're mammals. We're supposed to run from fire, not turn around and walk on it, right? So it goes against everything that we're taught. But isn't that how life works? You got to step through your fears. Because, what does fear mean to you? Forget everything and run? Because when you do the firewalk, that'll change to face everything and rise. At least that's what it did for me. In AA, we call it false images appearing real. True statement. Again, so it just comes back, to that, the two times in your life, right? You think you got two lives, well, you do. And the second one starts when you realize you have only one. So, I believe there's a molecule of magnificence inside all of us. It's there. You just got to go inside and ignite it. And then, because I believe too, if you help enough people get what they want in life, you'll always get what you want. So really what's happening is I'm teaching them to live from the inside out instead of from the outside in. And this is really big with entrepreneurs. Because they're running hard and chasing and, working hard and, get a new car, get a new house, get, more money, get more building, blah, blah, blah. No. You can chase your tail all day long doing that because you're never going to be happy with materialistic stuff. It's not going to happen. Oh, you might feel a little happy, in the beginning when you get the new car, but a month later it's like, okay, now what? Because then, and if you got to be careful, because if you don't stop wanting stuff, you'll never stop. I want this, I want that, I want this, right? If I get this, I'll be happy. If I wait for that, I'll be happy. Well, that's not true. Happiness is now, period. And, I remember a college coach here in the U.S. said one time, I'll never forget what he said. He said, what was interesting is that they went in to go play a team and they were really underrated, right? This team was favored. They were going to beat them really bad. Well, they went in and they won. And they were not supposed to, right? And then the following week, they were supposed to win, and they didn't. And the coach is like scratching his head. Here, we beat that team, but we didn't beat that team. And what he formulated out of that was life is never as good as it seems. Life is never as bad as it seems. Reality is somewhere in the middle. Right? And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing in what you do as well is Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And it really sounds like you're empowering people to be the hero of their journey. And even the people who, for whatever reason, aren't successful in the firewalk or glass walk or whatever it is, that's their refusal of the call. You're still giving them an opportunity to start on their journey. What's your thought on that? What is your relationship with empowering someone to be the hero with their story?
Well, I think that for a lot of us, a lot of people, there's someone that comes along in someone's life who believes in them and encourages them and inspires them. And that's really the moment that I have with them in that moment, is I have an opportunity to go, look, you can do this. You can choose not to. I warn people all the time, look, you come to this seminar, you're here. There's no accidents here. You ended up in a firewalk. Now, if you choose not to do it tonight and you allow fear to make that decision, you're screwed. Because fear is going to tear you apart. Fear is a liar. Now, don't get me wrong. Fear is there to also keep us alive so we don't do dumb stuff. But fear is a liar. And again, the limits that we don't overcome, the limits that we think we have that we don't overcome, or the fear that we don't overcome, become our limits. And so I tell them, look, if you don't do it tonight, that's fine. Nobody here is going to make you do it. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. But again, I go back and I ask them, what's the worst that can happen? Burn your feet off? Die? No. Might you get a little kiss or a little blister? Okay. So you got a little badge of honor. So what? You also just participated in a 1,000-year-old ritual that people from all around the world have used to create unity amongst themselves and those people that they're interacting with. So yeah, be careful. Make the right decision tonight, that's for sure. And if you're scared, that's okay. It's good. You're supposed to be. But tell me what it feels like 4 seconds later. Because I see it all the time, Myth, right? I see what they look like. I'm standing right there. I see the look on their face. They're scared. There's a lot of apprehension. 4 seconds later, they're jumping up and down and screaming like kids. There's a really good example of that. It's out there. Any of your listeners can go watch it themselves. There's a firewalk out there that Oprah did. Go Google it and watch her. When she's getting ready to do it, she's losing her shit. She is scared to death. She's all over the place. Well, okay, lots of people are. And then all of a sudden there's this moment where Tony says to her, hey, Oprah, what's the worst that could happen here? Burn your feet off and die? Come on. He goes, look, I'm not going to let you get hurt. And that's all it took, was someone to encourage them. One little word of encouragement is so important. That's why I teach all the time. When you go out and you're going to stores, be encouraging. Look at someone in the eye and say, thank you. I appreciate you. That's huge. You have no idea what somebody's going through in that moment, right? So there it was, and that's all Oprah needed. And boom, she walks. Well, when she gets to the celebration end, she's like a little kid, literally. She is jumping up and down, and she's screaming and yelling. And then the cameras follow her, and she goes over, and she makes one of the biggest business decisions of her life within seconds of the firewalk. I wonder why. Because she's in a peak state. She's way up here, way above the line. And she created what was called the next chapter. And that's when she took Harpo and created what's called the next chapter. And it's right there on camera. You can see her. That happens a lot. I remember a young man that came to a seminar years ago with Tony, and his family, basically, he thought he could make a good writer. He thought he could write a screenplay for a movie. And his family went, no, you can't. Hollywood won't let you. You have to know somebody. You don't have the skills. You look at all these people that write these screenplays. So his family beat him down. Sound familiar? Lots of people can relate to that, unfortunately. Well, he went to the Tony Robbins seminar. He went to UPW. He went to the Firewalk. He went home, and he wrote Sleepless in Seattle. So, I've seen a lot, again, that I've walked tens of thousands of people. And it's not a question to me, because, again, I get to see them before, and I get to see the after. Before, after, tens of thousands of times. So I know the fire is going to deliver. The fire always delivers. It's never disappointed me, not once. And I don't suspect it ever will, because I have a deep, deep love and respect for that fire. Because obviously, when you do a firewalk, you've got to do the firewalk with somebody that knows what they're doing. That's where I come in, right? I know what wood to use. I know how long to let it burn. I know how to lay the coals. I know how to beat them down with it. I know all the things, that need to be done to create the experience, because the last thing we want is to get somebody hurt. And I'm here to say that no one in my seminars or that's ever firewalked with me has ever been hospitalized. Nope, never happened. It sounds really dangerous, and it looks dangerous. It does. But it's not as dangerous as you might think, because when you step on those coals and you're walking at a brisk pace and you're walking with purpose, your foot's not on those coals all that long, right? So if it was, like, one of the things I tell people to do is when you get to the end, I tell them, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. I also tell them, don't stomp your feet, walk normally. Well, if you stomp your foot and you drive a coal in between your toes, okay, when's the last time you didn't pay attention to instructions? How often does that show up in your life? Right? So there's the lesson. So again, firewalking is just, it's got it all. You know what I mean? It's got, the uncertainty and the certainty, and it's got, it's mysterious and it's beautiful, and there's so many things about it that are just absolutely gorgeous. And, and I'm just that guy that was at the right place at the right time, if you will, and said, wow, okay, I'll do that. I'll be the guy that takes us out to the world. A couple of months ago, I was on a podcast, and I'm talking, we did the recording, and then after we recorded, we were talking sidebar, and Natalia asked me, she said, hey, David, have you ever done a firewalk for veterans? And I said, specifically? And she said, yeah. And I go, no, I haven't. Why? And she goes, well, we have 200 vets. And we think that would be a really powerful experience for them to help save their life. Not change their life, save their life, right? Because veterans, the numbers that are floating around in the U.S. is 22 a day are committing suicide. Well, guess what? That's not true. That's only if they leave a note. It's more like 40 in the mid-40s a day, men and women are taking their lives all around the world, including any Aussies that have gone off into war. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I said, so now, Natalia, can I have a night to think about this? I want to get back to you. I really want to dive deep into this. And that night when I went to bed, I woke up in the middle of the night and it came to me, Operation Do No Harm. And so I expanded on it, right? Because yes, vets, there's a lot of suicide. Well, first responders too. And there's two other categories that I brought into the mix. One, single moms. And number two, kids that have been bullied and neglected. So now what I'm doing is we created an entire program for them. So now companies can hire us to come into their city, and we'll choose a category. Who do you want to help? You want to help vets, first responders, kids, moms, whatever? Great. You sponsor it. You pay for it. Get your brand out in front so you guys get recognition and you get credit for it. Makes you look really good in front of the world. And, we're behind the scenes and we'll do all the work for you. We'll do all the heavy lifting. We'll do the talk. We'll bring in speakers. We do it all. And so that's something that just recently came to be. In fact, we've already scheduled our first firewalk for veterans in a place called Modesto, California. And we have 200 vets that are coming. In fact, just before your podcast, I was on the phone with Modesto working out some more of the logistics. So we're super, super excited about that. And that's kind of where my life is going now. Don't get me wrong. If corporate America wants to come and hire me to do an event for them, I'll do it. But I'm not focusing on that anymore. I'm focusing on Operation Do No Harm.
I love that so much. And it's so incredible that you have this amazing skill and that you're in a position now that you're literally, we spoke about this earlier, you're in a position to give back and use the incredible gifts that you had the opportunity to develop through your own journey and share that with the world. And so I'd love to finish off by asking you this one question. With the firewalks that you help people overcome fear and see what's on the other side, what is a really actionable step someone could do in the next 24 to 48 hours to take that first step for overcoming fear? They might not have access to a firewalk, and we're definitely not endorsing at-home firewalks.
Absolutely.
What is something that someone could do to help take that first step to overcoming fear?
Ooh, I love it. Well, I say all the time, do the things in life that are hard and your life will become easier. Do the things that are easy in life and your life will become harder. I can share with what my routine looks like every morning. I'm 70 years old. Guess how many medications I'm on? Zero. How did I do that? Because I go back to the basics. I'm a big fan of Gary Brecka. Gary Brecka, if you know who he is, he was a mortician expert. He worked for the insurance company. So when they would take blood, Gary would look at the blood and he could tell when somebody was going to die within a month. Yeah. And one day he woke up and said, I don't want to do that anymore. So now he teaches people how to be on the opposite end, how to become a superhuman. So to your question, like the first thing I do in the morning when I get up, if it's possible, if it's not cloudy, I go out on my deck. And as soon as the sun comes up, I expose my upper torso to that sunlight, which is super good for you. There's no damaging rays, no UVA. It's vitamin D, and your body, and our ancestors lived outside in the sunlight on a regular basis. So the other thing I do in that morning, I do deep diaphragmatic breathing. Now this is huge. You want to change your life? Do this one thing. Do 30 deep diaphragmatic breaths, and then at the end, hold your breath. So it looks like this. So you're breathing really hard. And you're forcing all that air and oxygen deep down into your diaphragm, low into your lungs. So I do 30 breaths, and then again, I hold my breath. I do 3 sets of those. So a total of 90 breaths. So I hold my breath 3 times. And here's why you do that. Disease does not exist where oxygen is present. Let me say that a little louder for the people in the back. Disease does not exist where oxygen is present. Your body will take that oxygen and use it to fight off inflammation, disease in your body, everything, because your body needs it, period. Then after I do that, I go over to the other side of my house and I put my feet on the planet, on Mother Earth. So I'm either touching, like I like to go stand in creeks and get my feet down into the mud, right? Or I put it on grass or sand or, whatever. So go put your feet on the planet for 9 minutes a day and watch what happens. Because we're disconnected. If you walk around in shoes all the time, you're never connected to the earth. Everything has to be connected to the earth. We know that dogs that live outside and they're walking around on the earth, they typically don't get cancer. Put a dog inside your house and they never go outside, they get cancer. I wonder how or why that is. The other thing I do is I do meditation. Find a meditation that you like. I do sound therapy. And then I start my day off, I go take my shower. And I take a really nice hot shower. And then you can probably guess what I do after that. I do a cold shower. Absolutely. Now, I live in the Appalachian Mountains. My cabin's at 3,500 feet above sea level. The water coming into my home right now, because it's wintertime, is 56 degrees. And here's what I can tell you. That's cold enough. Because, and like this morning, right? Boom, it hits me right here in the face. It takes my breath away, just like it's supposed to. And then you put that cold water all over my body for 3 minutes. And if nothing else, maybe go try a cold shower and do 3 minutes. Now, you want to make sure that the water's under 60 degrees if possible. But it doesn't have to be any colder. Some people do cold plunges and it's, 34 degrees, 35 degrees. There's no evidence to show that it needs to be colder to get the same effect. It just has to be cold enough where your body, sends all the blood inside. It protects your brain. It protects all your vital organs. It takes your breath away when it hits you in the face. And in fact, I was on a podcast and somebody asked about this before, and they said, so Dave, is there a point where it gets easier? And I go, no. No, it doesn't. It's not supposed to.
That's the point, right? Yeah.
Right? I mean, because one of the things that happen to older people is that we start to baby them. Oh, don't, wrap them up, keep them warm, don't let them get cold. No, absolutely not. Their body needs that. That's how we're designed. So maybe it's, I call it sun glazing, morning sun glazing, diaphragmatic breathing, grounding, earthing, as it's also called, in a cold shower. Those are things you can do that will affect your health right now, immediately. And yet, they don't teach that to you. When's the last time you went to a doctor and heard a doctor teach you that? And I'm not even going to go down that road. I'm just going to say
that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down with you right now. I'm just saying we need. And the other thing, of course, that I tell people all the time is you want to change one thing here, don't drink tap water. Don't do it. Stop. It's got chlorine in it. It's got fluoride. It's got other drugs in it from the recycled sewage the water goes back into the water system. Are you kidding me? Stop. Get yourself the best water you can find. If you can find mountain or spring water, get yourself good water. Water's everything. We're 70% water. Does it not make sense that the better, the cleaner the water we drink, the better it's going to be for our bodies? I mean, it's not rocket science. You know, our ancestors, did they drink tap water? No. No, they drank spring water. They drank mountain water. So I invite all of you, just go do some research on water. By the way, I have a little hydrogen generator.
Yeah.
And so I pour the water in there and I push a button, and about a minute later, it puts hydrogen in it more, look, I know there's already hydrogen in the water for all you smart Alex out there. H2O, I get it. I'm not saying that. Go do your research on it. You'll see that it does incredible things for your digestive. It helps hydrate you at a much higher level. I also drink a lot of coconut water, and I drink a lot of coconut milk too, because it's also good for you. So, God, I know that was a long answer to one question. What's one thing you can do? I don't know. Start with a cold shower. If there's nothing, I'll tell you what. Go do the 30 breaths. You can Google Gary Brecka breathing, and he will teach you how to do it. But it's real simple. You just go out and you breathe really intensely, 30 breaths. At the end, hold your breath as long as you can. Do another 30, hold your breath again, do another 30, and hold your breath, and watch what happens and how that will improve your life. It's off the chain. And if you do that every day for the rest of your life, I believe, based on things that I've read and said and the way I feel, that you'll definitely improve the quality of your life at a really high level. Add to it. Okay. There it is. And by the way, you see some of the people around the world that are dialed in with this whole living a superhuman lifestyle. Well, those are the things they do. All of them do that. They all expose their bodies to sun and breathe and good water and earthing. They do all those things. They know. It's not hidden. Well, it's hidden in plain sight, if that makes sense. But unfortunately, the ones that we looked up to out there about how to, stay healthy aren't telling us what we need to do. So that's my story, Myth, and I'm sticking with it.
And I think that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. I very much feel quite similar. And so, yes, completely agree with everything you've just shared, especially the cold shower. I think for a lot of people, that is a really symbolic moment. If someone can sit in a cold shower and just be exposed to that can have a transformative effect on someone's start to their day. So thank you so much, Dave, for sharing your story with us. I know I've been inspired and lit up by it in more ways than one. So thank you so much. I'll pop the link to the breathing exercise and your website in the show notes so people can learn more about you. But really, again, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being such a gift to this world and for making the commitment to share this gift with thousands of people around the world.
Thanks, Beth. Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. I so enjoy having you here, and I hope you've taken away powerful insights and tools that will support you to achieve your high-level results. Now, before you go apply all of this wisdom in your life, I would be so grateful if you are able to leave us a podcast review on the platform that you're listening to, or share this episode with a friend. Your support means that we can help more self-led, high-performing individuals just like you expand what's possible for them. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on today's episode, so please go on and shoot me a note on socials and let me know what you think. You can find me on Instagram at @MiffGalloway. Now, go ahead and make those dreams a reality, because actually, you can.